Welcome. Welcome to part 7 of our Turning the Page, a self-guided Recovery Dharma book study course in which we go through the Recovery Dharma workbook together with you from beginning to end. And in this episode, we're going to start to talk about wise speech. Wise speech. That's funny from a guy who stumbles over his words on a regular basis trying to record these videos. I know, right? I thought so. Anyways, in this Turning the Page self-guided Recovery Dharma book study course, we're going to go through the entire Recovery Dharma book with you in a 12-part series. If you're not familiar with Recovery Dharma, if you're just stumbling across this video randomly, it is a Buddhist approach to recovery from addictions of all kinds. So whether you're struggling with addiction to alcohol, to drugs, or process addictions, harmful behaviors, Recovery Dharma is here to help you. And if you don't have a copy of the book, as I like to say repeatedly throughout this workshop, get a copy of the book. Seriously, get a copy of the book. Get a copy of the book, highlight it, make notes in it, follow along as you go through this workshop. And if you can read the sections ahead of the videos, that always helps. That way you can have an independent assessment of like, hey, what stood out to you on any given section. That said, this week, we're going to go through wise speech. Wise speech? What's that, James? I'm glad you asked, hypothetical person. Let's get to that. Okay, so wise speech. Wise speech is the third of the Eightfold Path, and it's pretty self-explanatory. I feel like for those of you who may not be familiar with the format and the structure of these videos, though, each week as we go through the various videos, there'll be a main theme that we cover as far as some top level themes of each section of the book that we're going through. From there, I will point out some things that I highlighted in my own Recovery Dharma book. And then from there, I'll share some personal experiences from 4+ years of doing, teaching, and participating in Recovery Dharma meetings and workshops and retreats and all that fun stuff. Um, Online, there's a lot of different, I've noticed there's different audiobook recordings of Recovery Dharma. I've noticed that there's a handful of general overviews of Recovery Dharma, but nobody has really gone through the book at the time of the recording of this video. So it is my hope, my aspiration, and my goal to provide you some just shared knowledge as to what this book means to me. Buddhist recovery has saved my life, it's changed my life. I'm super passionate about this stuff. And wherever you're at in the world and wherever you're at in your recovery journey, I hope you find some value in these videos. So, that said, we're talking about wise speech this week, and let's get to the first point of wise speech. Let's get into the first couple quotes. Wise speech on page 27 of the book. I like how on page 27, right off the bat, it just cuts to the point of saying, wise speech is based on the intention to do no harm. That's right, the intention to do no harm. We've all used speech in a manner that may create harm. Lying to keep others from knowing what's really going on, gossiping with the intention of putting someone down, or satisfying the desire to be recognized. And then further down, I have highlighted the lines. The basic foundation of wise speech is honesty and truthfulness. Yeah, honesty and truthfulness. Dishonesty, this is the important part, is exaggeration, minimizing, omitting, or lying with the intention of presenting a distortion of reality. I think we're all familiar with that if we're struggling with addiction. It can take the form of white lies to avoid embarrassment or exposure, half truths to keep from being caught, or seemingly harmless things said at the expense of others. We may say more than we really know to be true in the hopes of appearing smarter or more confident in our position or feeling. Sometimes we say something before we know the truth. Yeah, I love wise speech. Wise speech is, we'll get into this in point number two of the fact that we all have to get honest in sobriety. But the first point The first theme that I want to touch on in Wise Speech that stood out to me when I got to Buddhist recovery is the fact that apparently there's four different types of lies. Yeah, there's four different types of lies. There's the lie of exaggeration of I had $1 million a day cocaine habit, or just blowing things out of proportion. You wouldn't believe this story, and yeah, I don't, because it's exaggeration. There's also the lie of minimization of which I was pretty good at. Of hey, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's like, just minimizing things. There's the blatant lie that we're all familiar with of just completely making something up that's a complete fabrication and a total lie. And then there's my favorite one, which is the fourth type of lie, and that is the lie of omission. The lie of omission is my favorite type of lie. It's the I didn't lie to you. I just didn't present all the facts to you. That is just, I hate to tell on myself, and I hope my family's not watching this one, but I think we're all human beings lie from time to time. And as it points out in the reading, occasionally it'll be just little white lies to avoid embarrassment. There'll be the occasional half truths and such. But where this becomes particularly important for the Eightfold Path, for wise living, for renunciation, for the practice, and for getting, staying, and sustaining sobriety, important things I know, comes in point two. So point one was there's four types of lies. Point two starts with the quote: "In active addiction, we develop the habit of dishonesty. Yes, we do. We lie to cover up or mislead others about the nature and extent of our using or behavior. Yep, check the box on that one. We lie so we can satisfy the craving our fixation needs by hiding our actions, our feelings, or the amount of money and effort we put into satisfying our craving." That probably sounds familiar to a lot of us. Many of us lie for the sake of lying because the truth represents a reality we can't tolerate. Yeah. We get trapped by our secrets, and for many of us, having a double life becomes an addiction all its own. This is why honesty is foundational to recovery. Yeah, honesty is foundational to recovery. You got to get honest. We all have to get honest. I had to get honest. And honesty is foundational for healthy relationships. It's integral to the inquiry process as we go through this book, and honestly, just it's integral to getting down to the cause and conditions of what drove our addictive behavior. So as you're going through the inquiry lists throughout this book, especially the Four Noble Truths, as we discussed in a previous video, as we start to dig into, you know, the true severity of addiction is suffering, as we dig into the causes and conditions that were driving our addictive behavior, and we dig into, what exactly were the feelings that we weren't willing to feel. What are the feelings that we were endlessly pursuing mindlessly through craving, and ultimately getting honest about what does recovery look like, getting honest about the fact that recovery is possible in the third noble truth, and getting honest about the fact that we can sustain a better way of living. And then ultimately committing to the fourth noble truth of committing to the path, committing to the eightfold path, and just committing to, in more simple terms, wise living. But all of that fundamentally starts with getting honest. If we can't get honest with ourselves, I do remember. I'll wrap up this point with an anecdote of a manager that I had back in the day, a boss of sorts. And I remember one time our team was struggling very badly with our performance metrics, and the manager came in a huff, and he started yelling at us, and he just goes, "Listen, feel free to lie to me all you want, but at the end of the day, don't lie to yourself, guys." And it was definitely a line, for whatever reason, stood out to me, was the fact that he was totally fine with us all lying to him as far as our sales numbers and the effort that we were putting into our jobs. But at the end of the day, he genuinely and sincerely wanted us to look within ourselves, and look at our own situation and say, "Hey, feel free to lie to me all you want, but don't lie to yourself." So I think at the essence of recovery, that really cuts through a lot of the BS that a lot of us have to deal with, is the fact that feel free to lie to your family. I mean, I'm not endorsing lying to your family, but it's one thing to lie to other people, but at the end of the day, when you're by yourself, surrounded by four walls, don't lie to yourself. Start to get honest. I know that was a big part of my recovery process was getting honest about my situation. And if you haven't done so already, I would strongly encourage you to start to take a look at yourself as far as what your wise speech looks like as you go through this chapter. And then ultimately, not just the concept of one, um, you know, uh, getting honest, avoiding the four types of lies. Two, as far as the concept that we need to get honest with ourselves. But there is the third point that I want to touch on, and this might not this definitely comes up in the in-person meetings. This paragraph on page 28, and I'm going to do a bunch of reading on this one, but it comes up. It definitely stands out for a lot of people in their recovery process, and I want to just read the whole thing. It goes the lines of, "It may sound like wise speech is primarily about discerning when not to speak, but this isn't always the case. Many of us grew up in families where it wasn't safe to talk openly about our thoughts and feelings. Some, because of certain experiences or cultural conditioning, have been taught that we don't have permission to use our own voices or lack the power to speak and be heard. For many of us, practicing wise speech may mean learning how to use our voices that have been silenced and to wisely communicate the needs and boundaries we've gotten used to keeping hidden. At times, this includes speaking up for others when harm is done. For many of us, it is an effort to be liked, for fear of rocking the boat, and due to exhaustion of repeatedly not being seen and heard, have favored being nice over being true to ourselves. And this is definitely the part that stands out to me. Wise speech teaches us that speaking up, even when it's hard, is sometimes the best choice, and that speech is never truly kind when we cause harm to ourselves. Yeah, knowing to vocalize our needs, vocalize our thoughts, feelings, and our boundaries, especially in the recovery process. One of the things I do appreciate about the Recovery Dharma program specifically is that it is very trauma informed, as well as just promoting the concept of emotional stability as well as healthy boundaries. And so, for a lot of us in recovery, myself included, we've had to learn how to renegotiate healthy boundaries. We've had to learn how to speak up in our recovery. We've had to learn how to vocalize what our needs are. And I would definitely encourage you to reflect on that in the inquiry process of when have you needed to speak up and perhaps you haven't vocalized your needs. And then lastly, we do have a bonus point this section. Traditionally, I try to limit this to just three major points, but this week we have a fourth point, and it's a bonus point. And this is something that's not normally associated with wise speech. A big part of wise speech is equally just wise listening. Yeah, wise listening. And the section before I go on my little tangent on that is finally, wise speech is careful listening. This is at the bottom of 28. It is also knowing when not to speak when a wise response isn't available to us. We must listen with compassion, understanding, and receptivity. It can be really helpful to observe how much of the time we spend listening to someone else is actually spent judging them or planning what we're going to say in response. And this is the key point. It's always the last line that's the key point, isn't it? Deep listening without selfishness or an agenda is an act of generosity that lets us build true connection. Yeah, build true connection. And connection is a lot of what recovery is renegotiating relationships, figuring out how to better manage our relationships with others in a more secure and healthy manner. Wise living listening wise listening is one of my favorite parts of any given meeting. I always think of Thich Nhat Hanh's Plum Village tradition of Dharma sharing and Dharma circles, and the whole concept that you're always encouraged to share from the heart, and also to actively listen from the heart. That when someone's going around the Dharma circle or going around the meeting and sharing, you know, just the simple act of listening to someone who's suffering and who's going through early sobriety or just going through a hard time, wise listening is quite possibly one of the most compassionate things that you can give to anyone. So many of us suffer. So many of us just don't have people to listen to us. So if you can suit up and show up to a meeting and do some wise listening, you're doing a greater good than you probably realize. So, um, as far as questions for reflections, as far as homework assignment, quote unquote, if you and I were working together, I'd probably ask you two or three questions of saying, one, where have you practiced wise speech on a regular basis? Like, what are your general thoughts on wise speech? I would also ask you to go through the inquiries here. The inquiry questions: have you caused harm with your speech? How? I would definitely ask you to answer that one. Have you been dishonest or harsh in your communication? When and in what specific ways? And then, are you careful to avoid causing harm with your speech? I think those would be the three inquiry questions I would encourage you to fill out, to do some journaling on. And if you and I were working together in person, we would definitely meet up and discuss, the concept of where we have been wise with our speech, where we haven't been wise with our speech, because we're human. And we'd also probably do a deeper dive discussion on what is wise listening and the applications of just listening to others in meetings and the value of showing up to meetings and listening with an open heart. So, yeah. So, thank you so much for your interest in these videos. Thank you for your going through turning the page. The self-guided Recovery Dharma Book Study course. Next week, or the next video, I guess. I keep calling it weeks, but in the next video, we're going to actually have a 2-for-1 combo. We're going to do both wise action as well as wise livelihood. The week after that, we'll do wise mindfulness and wise concentration together. So don't discount the fact that we're bundling two of the folds together. The hope and the aspiration is to get through the book in a timely manner for you, and to not bog you down with excessive details. So, next video, we're going to be doing wise action as well as wise livelihood. And that should be coming up right about now. I hope, maybe. Cross my fingers. Should be starting any second now. Okay.